So the second set of indicators you got from the results of your Myers-Briggs test is whether you are more sensing or more intuitive. And this is really about how you make sense of the world, how you gather information to make sense of a decision you have to make, of a problem, of a relationship, of anything that you need to understand in order to move forward. And if you're more sensing, stronger on the S side, you're really interested in what is concrete and perceivable empirically through one of your senses. You want to know facts. You want to know what's on the ground now. That's really where you look toward. And you're very interested in how do we you move forward in a practical way with the data that you gather. Very interested in hands-on, tangible, empirical. Don't always trust words a lot or people who speak a lot. Much more interested in what's on the ground now. Actions over words is really important to you. You might in your relationships say that love is a verb. So much more interested in the reality of the experience of hands-on than any sort of feeling or idea. So you're very much a bottom line kind of person. If you're more intuitive, you make sense of the world through gathering impressions, through gathering senses, through considering larger meanings. You're interested in pattern recognition and making patterns, principles, core ideals. You enjoy contemplation and consideration more even than hands-on sort of exploration and work. And your real interest in is you're very interested in what is possible, in possible innovations, in new sorts of implications for ideas or technologies. Henry Ford would be an example of somebody who used intuition. He once said, if I wanted to know what American people thought they wanted, they would say a faster horse. Now, he, of course, went beyond what American people thought were possible and invented a car. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, was also somebody who very much embraced intuition in thinking about possibilities. So if you're sensing, you have some great strengths as a leader, and great capacity to be trusted and really appreciated because you're somebody who very much is consistent. You look for facts, you look for data, and then you trust that. So people have a sense of you as being very consistent and reliable because you are interested in what is practical, you're interested in what is already here, what the data says, and you follow that. So you're pretty direct about that. You're pretty clear about what's here and now, and you express that. So people really trust you in that way. Um, the blind spot to consider is that people can also experience you as being rather narrow-visioned, myopic, only focused perhaps the details on what is possible right now, and unable to look at future possibilities and big picture considerations. And that makes you rather predictable. You're always going to just look at the ground, look at the data, and that's it. So people could perceive you potentially as closed-minded, closing off possibilities. You want to be careful about becoming the person who is always saying no to ideas, to always saying that's not possible, or in the real world that will never happen. That gets to be tedious for people who are being led by you, because it indicates a sort of a closedness and also an arrogance, perhaps a perception that you think you're always right because you're so confident in data. So how you compensate that for that? As a leader, make sure that you incorporate into processes with your groups big picture thinking, messy brainstorming, visioning. And if you can't really do that, enlist somebody from your team or somebody you know to guide your team in that work of really stepping outside the box and being imaginative, being visionary. Again, if you can't do that, there's lots of activities you can do to encourage brainstorming and big thinking. Find somebody who can help you with that. On the other side of the spectrum is intuition. And of course, if you're intuitive, it doesn't mean that you can't think with data. And if you're sensing for that matter, it doesn't mean you don't have intuitions. It just means that this is the way you prefer to make conclusions after you gather information. Great strengths of intuitive leaders is that they're perceived as being very deep thinking, as being ones who certainly think outside the box, visionary, and inspiring because they see beyond what seems possible and they invent. They think of things like the car or the iPod, and that's very inspiring for people who work with you. So people see in you a strength that many don't have, which is the ability to go beyond and see beyond perceived limitations. Blind spots, though, are that you can be perceived as being flaky because people may think you don't pay enough attention to either data or practical implications, and that can leave a sense that you're not really grounded. And it's hard to trust a leader, to follow a leader, if they seem unreliable or not grounded in reality, ignoring real practical limitations. And so, in doing that, if you, and the reality is, if you ignore practical limitations like time or money, your great ideas may not actually end up blossoming, and people can lose some faith in you as a leader, and you can be perceived as kind of flaky. So, compensation strategies, find ways to make sure that you are very grounded in time and space, that you can plan your day, you can plan your month, you have a clear sense of timelines. Now, it doesn't mean you need to be overly patient. Impatience can be really effective as a leader. You can really push yourself and others to deliver in a fast way, but be as realistic as possible in mapping out your time and space. Okay, the next set of criteria or next set of descriptors are around feeling and thinking. So this is your F or your T on your Myers-Briggs results. And this is just about how you make decisions. So once you've gathered that information, whether that's through intuition and pattern recognition or through data and factual analysis, how do you then make decisions? So if you're strong on the F, your way of making decisions really starts with considering the implications for everyone involved, really empathetically stepping into the points of views of those who are going to be affected by the decision. So you come from a great place of empathy. That doesn't necessarily mean compassion. It doesn't mean that you're more nice or caring than others, but it means that when you are making a decision, you have a strong preference for thinking about the implications of that decision through the perspectives of others. You do have a real desire to harmonize your group, though, and to be in relationships, whether that's your family or your team, that are harmonious. So there may be a sense of not wanting to create conflict. And you're perceived by others, because you understand their points of view, as being very warm. In terms of communication, you may be indirect, because you understand how other people feel. You may be a little bit reluctant to be direct with people if you're afraid what you're going to say is going to hurt their feelings. So your communication style may be that of being indirect. If you're more on the thinking side, the T side, you make decisions using logical and objective analysis. You're not interested in so much in the people or the feelings. You're interested in what is the goal or what is the situation and what is the most rational movement forward to reach our stated goal. You are action oriented. You want to get things done and you want movement. And you are very interested in being fair and objective. So not getting biased by other people's feelings or not letting squeaky wheels, as in really loud people, drive decisions. You want to be very fair and measured and considerate. And you tend to be pretty direct in your communication. You say what you think because you trust the analysis. Here's the analysis, here it is. I'm sorry if it doesn't feel good for you, but that's what it is. So, in terms of leadership, very strong qualities that come from being feeling oriented is that people tend to really become loyal toward you. They trust you because you demonstrate a care for their inner experience, that their emotions, how decisions will affect them. So people trust you to take care of them on a certain level, and that inspires a lot of loyalty. You also, because you tend to be considerate of others' experiences, are seen as being kind, and therefore you motivate your team to be kind. And you do have the ability to bring about a lot of harmony within a group. Now, of course, this does not mean you're not a sharp, analytical, objective thinker. It just means that in making decisions, you tend to operate from this perspective of what is the impact on everyone going to be, and let's try to maximize harmony. Blind spots, though, are that this can lead to a lack of accountability, a sense of a lack of accountability. And the reason for that is the lack of accountability is that you may be so interested in and so concerned about how other people feel and are going to be affected that you may not always hold people accountable because you're afraid of upsetting them or creating a lack of harmony or disunity. And when people on your team see you not hold others accountable, that can lead to a sense of the fact that you may, or a sense that you may have biases or play favorites, or not have the strength to really hold people accountable. Can also lead to a denial about problems because by addressing problems, sometimes that creates friction and breaks down harmony. And so it can lead to denial as well as an indirect, because of the indirect communication style, you may deliver your critiques in sort of passive aggressive ways, which can be ultimately more destructive than anything. So you really want to watch for that sort of passive aggressive communication instead of, and rather for compensation, learn some strategies for direct, compassionate but direct communication about your concerns. In order to avoid the problem of bias and favoritism, it's really helpful to get very clearly written, established policies and procedures and standards that you follow. And establish those before you have to make decisions so that you can go through difficult times when other people's feelings are going to be hurt or others are going to be rejected, and go ahead and stick to those policies that you've established ahead of time. And that can help you manage the problem of bias. Ultimately, you're going to have to get comfortable with your discomfort or being able to manage your discomfort around conflict, because conflict and disagreement is going to be inherent when you're a leader. You don't want to be cold to that, but you don't want fear of people being upset to really limit your ability to lead. For thinking, of course, this does not mean you're not empathetic and that you don't have deep emotions. It's just that when you are making decisions, you are as objective and analytical as possible. Great strengths around thinking is that people are going to trust you in that you say what you see, and you don't mince words. You are persuaded by data, and so people can trust that you're not going to play favorites. You're going to really look at the data, and that ability to be seen as fair is huge in inspiring long-term loyalty. You tend to get results too because you're action oriented, and that's very inspiring to see as a leader. Blind spots, though, are that you, in your directness and your bluntness, and also in the fact that you don't really consider necessarily the personal impact of decisions, can lead to some hurt feelings and lack of trust in you to take care of your team. And that can lead to the perception that you're emotionally cold, uncaring. And the truth is that sometimes the data is not the whole picture, and oftentimes it's not. And that really strong thinkers can really miss the larger implications of decisions for the finite details. It's really important to remember in leadership that people are persuaded by pressures that are not always rational. That we have subconscious motivators that kick in that influence us. Uh, there's no other way to explain the fact that, for example, those who are deemed to be attractive as defendants tend to get convicted less often than those who are considered ugly. That's not objective, right? That's a bias. And people and jurors will never admit that, but those biases come in. So it's very important when you're motivating people and making decisions to recognize that perception is reality, that data doesn't create reality. And you have to think about what drives people beyond data. And sometimes thinkers can miss that and be just too focused on the micro. And in long term, the problem is that because a leader has to motivate others, if all you are focused on is just results and data and not on inspiring others and creating meaning within the work you're doing, you can lose motivation from others. So focus on listening deeply to your team, finding activities that bring out listening and demonstrate your desire to listen. Appreciate others. So thank you cards, cards of appreciation, birthday gifts, those sorts of ways to really make sure you're articulating appreciation of others, to let them know that you do care about them and care about their lives. And in conversations with your team members, make sure you express an active interest in their lives and be genuinely interested in who they are as people.